1509 BC, 2386 AM. Moses visited his Israelite parents in Goshen. His real Egyptian name is not known, but his Hebrew name was Shemaiah. In Goshen he saw firsthand how his people were treated, and even killed an Egyptian soldier who raped a Hebrew woman, while her husband was tied and forced to watch. The matter was reported, and Pharaoh sought to kill Moses, but he fled Egypt and took up residence in Ethiopia, Cush, among the court. He would remain there for 9 years before the people elected him king. This was the 148th year of the Israelites going into Egypt, or 1776 months, 1 Jasher. 1504 BC, 2391 AM. The dark satellite, a former rock and metal moon of Nibiru, passes through the inner solar system unnoticed. 1500 BC, 2395 AM. King Kikianus of Cush, Ethiopia, died, and Moses is made king by the people. He is then married to Kikianus's wife, Queen Adoniah, a Cushite woman. Moses was 27 years old, and his reign would last 40 years over the Africans. This was the 157th year of the Israelites going down into Egypt, 1 Jasher. 1489 BC, 2406 AM. The Anunnaki planet Nibiru reaches aphelion far out in the Kuiper belt, furthest distance from the Sun, after 366 years, when it passed over the ecliptic in the inner solar system in 1855 BC. It now starts its 366 years back toward the inner system. 1485 BC, 2410 AM. Caleb was born in Egypt, an Israelite later to become one of the heroic spies that goes into the land of Canaan and personally sees the gigantic sons of Anak. In this year the men of Ephraim prematurely invade Canaan, believing that the allotted period of their enslavement is over. The other Israelites do not join them. The Ephraimites are slaughtered by the Philistines, 30,000 men dying. 20,000 of the Philistines are killed. Only 10 men of Ephraim make it back to Egypt. This was the 172nd year of Israel in Egypt since 1657 BC, and one cursed earth period of 4114 years after the Babel dispersion in 1899 BC. 1 Jasher, Joshua, Chronicles. 1484 BC, 2411 AM. King Janaeus of Italia, Chittim, died after 50 years of rule, the successor of Zepho. This was the 16th year Moses ruled over Cush, Ethiopia. King Angeas of Libya, the enemy of Zepho, also died in this year. He was succeeded by his son Asdrubal. This will be a name to remember. King Janaeus is interred in a huge funerary complex in Italia that takes 6 years to build. His burial will not occur until 1478 BC, and during this time no one will be elected king over the Chittim, an interregnum period. 1 Jasher. 1481 BC, 2414 AM. In the 176th year of the Israelites going into Egypt in 1657 BC, Dardanus founds the famous city of Troy and the Trojan state of Ilium on the coast of Asia Minor. This was 34 years prior to the exodus of Israel from Egypt, as related in Petavius' History of the World. Troy would continue for 252 years to 1229 BC, when a Mycenaean-led Greek invasion force destroys the city and scatters the people during a major Mediterranean Sea Peoples Federation war. 1. Tracing our ancestors. 1478 BC, 2417 AM. After King Janaeus is buried in a massive funerary complex that required 6 years of labour to construct, Latinus is made king of Italia, and he builds a huge navy in this the 22nd year Moses was king of Cush, Ethiopia. Latinus through history is a name to remember. In this his first regnal year, the Chittim attack Libya, about 15 days' sail. The Africans are defeated and King Asdrubal is killed. His daughter Ushpezania is captured and married to Latinus. The Chittim depart back to Italia, and the Libyans after this defeat make Asdrubal's younger brother king, Hannibal. This was 106 years after Libya first attacked the Chittim in 1584 BC. The Libyans attacked Italia also in 1580, 1565 and 1555 BC. This was the first time the Chittim ever attacked Libya. This invasion was early in the year. In this same year, King Annibal of Libya puts together a navy and invades Chittim with his entire army, winning many victories over the Chittim in land battles in an overseas campaign that lasts 18 years. This is precisely what occurred 1260 years later in 218 BC in the Second Punic War, when the people of the North African coast, Carthage, were at war with Rome. In 218 BC, the Carthaginian general Hannibal, invaded Italy with his African army and almost made it to the walls of Rome in a war lasting 18 years on Roman soil, further demonstrating that the past can be reflected in future events. In 207 BC, during this war, the brother of Hannibal was killed, his name being Asdrubal. Beginning in 1478 BC, the book of Jasher reads clearly, "And Hannibal continued the war for 18 years with the children of Chittim, and Hannibal dwelt in the land of Chittim and encamped there for a long time." 1 Jasher. 1461 BC, 24:34 AM. In the 196th year of the Israelites entering Egypt in 1657 BC, Pharaoh Thutmose III died in agony and shame after a bone-breaking chariot accident that terminated 10 years of leprosy and boils that afflicted him. Thutmose III had lived 115 years, 1380 months, being 138 times 10, a lifespan not uncommon at that time. Moses would live to 120 years. In this year Moses was 66 years old, 792 months. This death came 72 years after 1533 BC, when all of Egypt wondered at the sight of a strange comet. Thutmose III's son succeeds him, the famous Ramesses, who would reign for 14 years before drowning in the Red Sea, chasing the Israelites in 1447 BC. This was the 196th year of Israel's presence in Egypt. 1460 BC, 24:35 AM. This was a bad year for the people descended from Ham. Ham took the throne in 2012 BC after the flood, exactly 552 years before this 1460 BC date. The Phoenix cycle, a duration that ends with cataclysm, destructions and ruinations. After 18 years, the Libyo-Latin War ends after the Chittim counterattacked Libya and Annibal, unable to conquer them in Italia, returned to fight on his own soil. The whole campaign was a loss of wealth and men. The Libyans were a Hamitic people. Another branch of Hamitic line were the Cushites, who are persuaded in this year by Queen Adoniah to send Moses away because he was not like them, and he would not lay with her to produce an heir. Her son by the former king, Kikianus, was old enough to reign over Cush, and he was the same race they were. Moses left with many presents and travelled to Midian, but the Midianites mistook him for an escaped prisoner and imprisoned him, where he would stay for 10 years. Moses was in fact left in a cave for dead, but a woman named Zipporah saved him by feeding him secretly. Had Moses stayed in Cush, he would have begun a memorable dynasty, and his departure was their loss. 1 Jasher. 1450 BC, 24:45 AM. Moses is released from his Midianite dungeon after it is revealed that Zipporah had been keeping him alive. He is married to Zipporah. His confinement lasted 10 years.